Yeah. So good morning, students. So welcome you all to another session. So let's begin today's session. So in the previous class, we were actually discussing about the reproductive system in case of earthworms, right? And we have completed with the male reproductive system, right? So today, let's take up with the female reproductive system, the anatomy of the female reproductive system, and then we'll just try to understand a few things with regards to the process of reproduction in case of earthworms, right? So let's begin today's session by taking up with the female reproductive system of the earthworm. Right. Now, talking about the earthworm, we said that earthworms are said to be hermaphrodites. That is, both the male as well as the female sex organs are present within the same organism. Right. But still, I just told you that even though both the male as well as the female sex organs are present within the same organism, usually self-fertilization does not occur. Usually the cross-fertilization only is the one which is favored in this particular organism. The reason also I told you in the previous session, right, that all of these organisms, they are said to be protandrous. That is, the male sex organs, they mature much faster than that of the female sex organs, right? So that's the reason why cross fertilization is being favored. So in continuation with that, we started discussing about the anatomy of the male reproductive system, and we have taken that in the previous session also, right? So today, let us take up with the anatomy of the female reproductive system. Now, talking about the female reproductive system, the female reproductive system of the earthworm consists of the primary sex organ, which is nothing but the ovaries. So, female reproductive system consists of one pair of ovaries, which is located in the 13th segment. Right. So with regards to the male reproductive system, I told you that there are two pairs of testes, two pairs of primary sex organs called the testes, which was located in segment number 10 and segment number 11. So here, with regards to the primary sex organs in case of females, the ovaries are only one pair and they are seen located in the 13th segment. Right. Now, let us see how exactly they are said to be arranged. So for that also, we are not doing the entire structure. So just a few things, just a few segments which we actually require. So this will be the 12th segment. So this is the 13th segment. So this will be the 14th segment. And the 15th segment. This segment will be fine. So in the 13th segment, right, in the 13th segment, there is one pair of ovaries actually being present. Right, so in the 13th segment, there is one pair of ovary being present. So how exactly is these ovaries being present? So these ovaries are attached to the intersegmental septa 12 by 13 through a small stalk-like structure. So from this stalk arises these finger-like structures which are actually considered to be the ovaries. So here also towards the lateral side of the 13th segment, there are these finger-like structures which actually come up. And these structures are regarded as the ovaries. Right? So one pair of ovaries located in the 13th segment constitutes the primary sex organ in case of the female organism. Now, right below the ovaries, there is a funnel-like structure, very much similar to that of testicular funnels, what we have taken up when we were talking about the male reproductive system. So right below the ovaries, there is a funnel-like structure which is being present. So on both sides. So these funnels, we will start calling them as the oviductal funnels. Right. Now these oviductal funnels will now open up into a tubular structure where both of these tubes would join or combine together. Right. So they would open up into these tubular structures that are being present. Now these tubular structures, they are usually referred to as the oviduct. Right? So there is a pair of oviduct which would arise, and both of these oviducts arising from the which are present below the two ovaries would combine together to form a common opening, right? And that common opening we would start calling it as the female genital pore. Right? It is called the female genital pore. So what exactly is happening here is, as and when the ovaries starts releasing the ovum, all of those ova are actually being captured by the oviducal funnels. Now again, these oviducal funnels are lined by ciliated epithelium, right? Now since they are lined by ciliated epithelium, they would start capturing the ovum which is being released from the ovaries, and they would pass on those ovaries into the oviduct, and through the oviduct, the ovum will be released to the outside through this female genital pore. If you remember when we were talking about morphology also, we spoke about this, right? I told you that in the 14th segment, on the ventral side, mid-ventral side, on the 14th segment, there is one opening which is called as the female genital pore, through which the eggs or the ovum are actually being released. And this is that female genital pore which is located in the 14th segment. Male genital pore, there is one pair of male genital pore located in the 18th segment, but with regards to the female genital pore, there is only one female genital pore located in the mid-ventral side of the 14th segment. Now, if you just see the structure of the ovaries, ovaries are nothing but a long pointed structure, or rather we can put it this way, they are nothing but finger-like structures which are being present. So let me just show you how exactly they are arranged. So this is the stalk through which they are attached to the intersegmental septa, right? And from the stalk arises these finger-like structures which are being present. Right? So this is how the ovaries are actually being present. So in the ovaries, there are these eggs at different stages of development. Right? So there are these eggs at different stages of development. So everywhere it is like this only, right? In all of these finger-like structures. So there are eggs being present at the different stages of development. So that means that the matured egg will actually be present at the base of this finger-like structure of the ovum, right? So from the base, each ovum will actually be released by the ovaries. So that's how the ovaries are actually said to be arranged here. Right? So the major components of the female reproductive system, very simple compared to that of the male reproductive system. Major components is the primary sex organs, which are called as the ovaries. So there is one pair of ovaries present in the 13th segment. Right? Then along with that, there is one pair of oviducal funnel right below the ovaries, which would capture the ovum which is being released from the tip of the ovaries. Right? And then they will transport it or conduct it through the oviducts, which extends up to the 14th segment. And in the 14th segment, both of these oviducts will combine together to form a common pore, which is called as the female genital pore. So through this female genital pore, the ovum is actually released to the outside. It comes outside the body of the sperm. So this is what is actually present. Now, along with this, there is one more structure also, which is actually a part of the female reproductive system, which is nothing but the Sphermatica. So these organisms have four pairs of, right? So they have four pairs of Sphermatica. Four pairs of Sphermatica being present, right? So these Sphermatica, they are present in the 6, 7, 8, and 9 segments, right? So one pair in each of the 6, 7, 8, and 9 segments. So these Sphermatica are actually said to be arranged, right? So one pair in the 6th segment, one pair in the 7th, 8th, and 9th segment. So let us see how exactly they are said to be arranged. So if you just start doing it here this way, say this is the worm here, right? And we have already spoken about this. So this would be the 5th segment. Let us consider this to be the 5th segment. 6, 7, 8, and this would be the 9th segment. So in each of the 6, 7, 8, and 9th segment, there is one pair of Sphermatica being present. So Sphermatica are nothing but small sac-like structures, right? So they are these sac-like structures which are actually being present here. Right? Small sac-like structures which are actually being present here. And these sac-like structures are involved in the storage of the sperms. right? So they are involved in the storage of the sperm. So 4 pairs, 1 in 6, 7, 8 and 9th segments, we would have the spermatheca being present. Now these spermatheca are majorly involved in the storage of the sperms. So what does that mean? Whenever the process of copulation occurs, remember I told you that the type of fertilization here is said to be cross fertilization, which is favored in these organisms. Right. So if cross fertilization has to occur, sperms from the other organisms should actually enter into this organism. So once the sperms from the other organisms are released, it would be temporarily stored in this sac-like structure, which is called spermatheca, until and unless the ovaries would start releasing the ovum. Right, so it would start acting as the sac-like structure, which is involved in the storage of the sperms. Now, these spermatheca, they would start opening to the outside through small pores which are being present, which we would start calling them as spermathecal pores, located at the intersegmental septa of 5 by 6, 6 by 7, 7 by 8, and 8 by 9. So the spermatheca present in segment number 6, right? So they would have their pores on the segment. They would have their pore on the segment here like this, at the intersegmental septa of 5 by 6. So this is the 5th segment and this is the 6th segment. So the pores are present at the intersegmental septa of, so talking about spermathecal pores. So these spermathecal pores are present at the intersegmental septa of 6 by 5 by 6. That is for the spermatheca located in segment number 6. And for this, it would be present in the intersegmental septa of 6 by 7, right? Then for the next one, it will be present at the intersegmental septa of 7 by 8. And then for this, for the last one, which is present in the 9th segment, it will be present at the intersegmental septa of 8 by 9. So this is how they actually open to the outside. So as and when the sperms are entering into the body of the other organism, so they will pass through the intersegmental septa and they are stored in the intersegmental septa unless and until the female ovaries or the female reproductive system will start producing the ovaries. Once the ovum is being released by the ovaries, that is the time where the sperms which are being stored in the spermatheca would be released to the outside, right? So this is what we have with the female reproductive system. Very, very simple compared to that of the male reproductive system, what we have actually taken up in the previous session, right? Now that we have done with the male and the female reproductive system, let us quickly take up a few things with regards to the process of fertilization, the process of process of copulation, fertilization, as well as the development of this organism. Right. So let us quickly take up with the process of reproduction. 3 processes. That is the process of copulation, fertilization, as well as the process of development. Copulation, fertilization, and the process of development. Now, talking about the process of copulation, right? As I've already mentioned, even though these organisms are said to be hermaphrodite organisms, right? Mostly cross-fertilization is being favored. Now, if cross-fertilization has to occur, there should be copulation or mating happening between the 2 organisms. So, during the process of mating or copulation, what exactly happens is both of these organisms or 2 different worms, they would start arranging themselves in a specific position, so that the sperms from one worm would be transferred into the spermatheca of the other worm. So let us see how exactly they are said to be arranged. So let us consider this to be a worm, right? So let us consider this to be worm A, right? So this is worm A, right? And here we'll just draw only a few segments, not all. So we'll draw only the segments where the spermatheca are being present. Right? So this would be 6, 7, 8, and 9 segment, right? And here we would have the pores, spermathecal pores, which are being present on the intersegmental septa, the spermathecal pores, right? Now, during the process of mating or copulation, one worm, if it is like this, the other worm will start arranging itself in a slightly different manner. So the other worm will arrange itself in the opposite direction. This is the worm here, right? So it would arrange itself in this direction such that the 18th segment of the worm B, let us assume that this is worm B. 18th segment of worm B, so this would be the 17th segment, and this would be the 19th segment, right? So it would arrange itself in such a way that the 18th segment of worm B coincides with the 9th segment of worm A, right? So we know that in the 18th segment there are these male genital pores which are being present, through which the sperms will actually be released to the outside. Now, as and when the sperms are released from the worm B, it should directly enter into the spermatheca of worm A. As a result of which, they would start arranging in this particular position, which we actually start calling it as juxtaposition, right? So they would start arranging themselves in juxtaposition such that the 18th segment of worm B coincides or lies right opposite to the 9th segment of worm A, so that the male genital pores combine or coincide with the spermathecal pore of the spermatheca located on the 9th segment. So once this happens, what exactly is happening is during this position, again, remember in the 17th segment and the 19th segment, I told you that there are two structures which are being present, which are called as copulatory papillae. And these copulatory papillae will start holding these two worms together as long as the process of copulation actually occurs. So as long as worm B is transferring the sperms into the spermatheca of worm A, this copulatory papillae will start holding the two organisms together. Right. Now, as and when the two organisms are held together like this, what would actually happen? The sperms from worm B, right, will be deposited into the spermatheca that is present in the segment number 9 of worm A. Once it is being full, then what happens? Once the spermatheca present in segment 9 is full, what would happen? This worm will start moving in this particular direction, or rather the worm A will start moving in the forward direction, or rather the backward direction. As a result of it, this time, the 18th segment will start fusing with the 8th segment. Right. Similarly, once the spermatheca in the 8th segment is being full of sperms, then again it will start moving back such that the 18th segment this time will start fusing with the 7th segment, or the 7th segment of worm A. Like this, all of the spermatheca that is present in worm A would be filled with sperms. Once enough of sperms are being passed on or transferred into the spermatheca of worm A, then both of these organisms will be separated. So once it is separated, now what would happen? Now what would happen? The worm A will start having the sperms of worm B in their spermatheca. Okay? Once after the process of copulation or mating, the worm A will now start having the sperms of worm B in their spermatheca. Getting it? So what would happen next? So the next stage here. So we are not worried much about the worm B now, because the work of worm B is done. So let us take up with the worm A now. Right? So this would be the worm A. So let me just do a few more segments here. So this would be 6, 7, 8, and 9. Right? So this would be 6, 7, 8, and 9 segments. Right? And then let's start drawing the clitoral segments now. So I'm just not doing everything here. So this would be 14, 15, 16. Right? So this would be the 14, 15, and 16 segments of the clitoral. So this is the clitoral segments that are being present. Okay, so this is the clitoral segment, 14, 15, and 16. And remember, this is worm A. Right? This is worm A. Now, here, there are these spermatheca being present. In the spermatheca, there are sperms that are being present. And here we would have the clitoral segment that is being present. Now, what happens? After the worm B has deposited the sperms into the spermatheca of worm A, then what happens? After both these worms get separated, this clitellum will now start secreting mucus. Right? Try to understand this carefully. Clitellum will now start secreting mucus. As a result of which, there would be some sort of a gap located, or some sort of a gap created between the clitellum and the body of the worm. Right, between the body of the worm. So how exactly it would happen is, say if this is the worm, what we are actually talking about, if this is the worm, and this is the clitellum, what we are talking about, right? So this is the clitellum, like this, right? This is the clitellum. Now, once the process of mating is being done, right? Once the process of mating is being done, once both the worms are being separated, what would happen? The clitellum, which was like this, completely covering the worm, will now start secreting mucus. As a result of which, a gap would be created between the clitellum and the mucus. So, a gap like this would be actually created between the clitellum as well as the mucus. So in this gap that is being created between the clitellum as well as the body of the organism, right? So from the 14th segment, which has the female genital pore, from the 14th segment, the eggs will actually be released into the space that is actually present. So here you can see the space, right? So between the space of the clitellum as well as the body of this worm, the eggs would actually be released. Once the eggs are released, what would happen? The organism will start withdrawing itself. Right? The organism will start withdrawing itself. That means the organism will now start moving in the backward direction. As a result of which, what would happen if the organism is moving in the backward direction? This clitellum will now start moving in the forward direction. Okay? Organism will start withdrawing itself. Entire organism will start moving backwards such that the clitellum alone, right, which is being secreted, which is being nothing but a mucus secretion, right? So the clitellum alone will start moving in the forward direction. So as the clitellum starts moving in the forward direction, as it comes up to the ninth segment, so into that particular space which was actually present, which had that ovum, into that particular space, the spermatheca that is present in segment number 9 will start releasing the sperms. Now, as it comes little more further, spermatheca of segment number 8 will start releasing their sperms. Similarly, spermatheca in segment number 7 and segment number 6 also will start releasing the sperms into that particular gap. And as and when the organism starts withdrawing itself completely, the spermatheca, or the rather, the clitellum will actually be sent out. The clitellum will now be released here. It is. So this would be the clitellum that was actually released. Now this clitellum will start having the ovum, right? The clitellum will now start having the ovum, the eggs, and at the same time, they would also start having the sperms, right? So ovum will be of worm A, so they will have eggs of worm A, right? They would have eggs of worm A, and they would have sperms of worm B, right? So eggs are of worm A, sperms are of worm B. Now between these two eggs as well as the sperms, there would be fertilization happening. Right? Before that, what exactly is happening is this entire clitellum will start changing its shape, right? It will start becoming harder, it will start becoming thicker, and the ends would actually be sealed up. Right, the ends would actually be sealed up. So inside this particular seal or sealed structure, right, inside this particular sealed structure, there is fertilization happening, as a result of which there is formation of zygotes happen. Now this case where the process of fertilization and zygote formation happens is what we start calling it as the cocoon, or we would start calling it as the ootheca. Either we call it as cocoon or we call it as ootheca. So since the process of fertilization is happening between the sperms and eggs of two different organisms, the type of fertilization here we would actually start calling it as cross fertilization. We would call it as cross fertilization. So I've also told you what could be the reason for cross fertilization. It is because these organisms, they are all said to be protandrous. That is, the male sex organs to mature first, and then only the female sex organs to mature. As a result of which, what is exactly happening? There is cross fertilization being favored. Now, since the process of fertilization takes place outside the body of the worm, we would start calling such type of fertilization as the external fertilization. Right? The fertilization is said to be a cross fertilization, and it is said to be an external fertilization. And once the zygotes have been formed, the zygotes will now undergo the process of development inside the ootheca or the cocoon. Right. So after the process of complete development, the cocoon actually breaks open. Once the cocoons break open, the young worms Yeah, right. So the young worms are actually released to the outside. So this is how the entire process of copulation, fertilization, and development is actually taking place in these organisms, which are usually referred to as the earthworm. Right. So with this, we have done with the anatomy of the earthworm. So before we wind up with this, a few economic importance of this particular worm, and then we'll proceed with the next organism. Right. So talking about the economic importance of this worm, that is the earthworm. Earthworms are actually regarded as the friends of farmers, right? They're called as the friends of farm. So we have also discussed why it is actually called, or why earthworms are actually referred to as the friends of farmers when we were talking about the digestive system. I told you, right? During the process of digestion, whatever undigested food is there, that undigested food is present in the form of worm castings, which is said to be rich in nitrogenous compounds. So as and when these worm castings are released into the soil, it would start increasing the fertility of the soil. Right? It will start increasing the fertility of the soil. Basically, it would start increasing the air holding capacity of the soil. As a result of which, the fertility of the soil is being increased. As a result of which, earthworms are usually referred to as the friends of farmers. So it is usually used for the process called as vermiform composting. It is used in the form of composting also. In some parts of the world, earthworms are also used as a food for them, right? And also, earthworms are also being used in the bait, as it is used as a bait for fishing, right? So for fishing, earthworms are also being used as a bait, right? So this is what we have with the organism called as the earthworm. The first organism what we have in this particular chapter, which is the earthworm, right? Now let's move on to the next organism what we have, which is called as the cockroach, right? Now talking about cockroach. So we are very much familiar about the cockroach, right? So one characteristic feature about cockroaches, they have a wide variety of habitat, right? They have a wide variety of habitat. The reason why they have a wide variety of habitat is two important reasons for their wide variety of habitat. Number one, they are able to feed on anything that is available. So cockroach. So they are able to feed on anything that is available. So whatever is available, they are able to feed on. That is one of the reasons why they have a wide variety of habitat. Second reason why they have a wide variety of habitat is the entire body of this organism is being covered by a chitinous exoskeleton, right? Chitinous exoskeleton. And this chitinous exoskeleton is said to be highly resistant to temperature, any sort of temperature. Either it be a cold temperature or hot temperature. You go to any part of the world where the temperature is said to be very cold, we find these organisms. You go to any part of the world where the temperature is too high, again we would find these organisms. Major reason is, again, first one, as I told, they are able to feed on anything, so they don't have any problem with their food. Second one, the entire body of this organism is being covered by chitinous exoskeleton, which is said to be resistant to temperatures, right? As a result of which, these organisms are able to bear huge variations in the temperature also, right? Now, whenever we discuss about cockroach, we would be talking about one important species, which is an American variety, which is called as Periplaneta americana. Periplaneta americana. So this is one variety, American variety, what we would actually be talking about whenever we discuss about this worm, this particular organism called as cockroach. Now, brief introduction to cockroach. We know that cockroach belongs to the phylum called as Arthropoda, right? So Arthropoda, one of the characteristic features of Arthropoda is that is nothing but jointed appendages. From the name itself, we can make out jointed appendages. Arthros refers to jointed, poda refers to appendages, right? Or legs, right? So these are the organisms which have jointed appendages or jointed legs. Therefore, we would start including them under this particular phylum called as Arthropoda. These organisms also exhibit metamerism, very much similar to that of these organisms called as earthworms, what we have just seen. So another characteristic feature of these worms is they also would exhibit the process of metamerism, right? Talking about the body cavity, that is the coelom, these organisms are also said to be eucoelomates, right? Eucoelomates, and they are all said to be schizocoelomates, right? They are all said to be schizocoelomates. True body cavity is actually formed by the splitting of the mesocoelomates, right? So that is what we have with a brief introduction of this particular organism. Now, let us start discussing about the morphology of this organism. That is morphology of the cockroach, right? Now, talking about morphology, the entire body of the cockroach could be divided into three parts, right? Majorly, the entire body of cockroach is divided into three parts. The first one is the head part, right? This is the first part, which is the head. The second part is called the thorax, Right? This is the second one, thorax, and the third part is called the abdomen. Right? So these are the three parts of the body of this organism. The entire body of cockroach can be divisible into these three regions: the head, thorax, and the abdomen. Now, connecting the head and thorax, there is a small structure which is called as neck, but most of the cases we will not be able to visualize neck because some of the segments of the thorax region will actually start covering the neck region, right? So that's the reason why we are not actually discussing here. Broadly speaking, we would start dividing, right, or distinguishing the entire body into these three regions: head, thorax, and abdomen. Now, as I've already mentioned, right, that these organisms exhibit the process of metamorphism, that is segmentation. The entire body is again said to be segmented, right? So let us see how many segments are there in all of these all of these regions. The head has 6 segments, right? There are 6 segments present in the head region. But again, all of these 6 segments are actually said to be fused together. So we'll not be able to observe each of the segment distinctly because all of them are actually said to be fused. What we can observe is the demarcation will be seen in the form of a small lines. That is what we can, based on those lines, we can start identifying that those are nothing but the segments of the head region, right? So the head, actually the head has these 6 segments which are actually said to be fused together, right? Now, what all does the head consist of? Head consists of a pair of, right? Head consists of one pair of eyes, which are usually referred to as the compound eyes, right? So head consists of one pair of eyes, usually referred to as the compound eyes, right? I hope all of you are familiar with compound eyes, right? So compound eyes, nothing but there are smaller units of eyes which are actually made up, smaller units of simple eyes which are actually made up of it, right? So if we start drawing the head here, so if we start making this as the head part here, right? So here the eyes would actually be present here, compound eyes, and these eyes are made up of smaller units, right? So the entire eye is made up of these smaller units, and each of this unit is called as ommatidia. So each unit is usually referred to as ommatidia. Now, characteristic feature is each ommatidia will start capturing a part of the image, right? Each ommatidia will start capturing a part of the image. What scientists say is each compound eye has approximately 2000 ommatidia being present. So what does that mean? As I've said, each ommatidia will start capturing a part of the image. So that means almost 2000 small pieces of images are actually being captured, and once all the pieces of images are being captured, they are put together so that one proper image is actually being formed. That's how these worms actually see. So such type of vision, we would start calling it as the mosaic vision. It is called mosaic vision, which is said to be one of the characteristic feature of the organisms possessing compound eyes, such as the cockroach. Right. So there is one pair of compound eyes which is present in the head region, which is composed of smaller units which are called as ommatidia, and each ommatidia will start capturing a part of the image, a piece of the image, and then finally all the pieces are being put together in a proper order so that one proper image is being formed. So such type of vision we would start calling it as the mosaic vision. So the head consists of one pair of compound eyes. Then what else does the head consist of? The head again consists of one pair of antennae. Right? The head also consists of one pair of antennae. Now these antennae, they are said to be sensory in function. Right? So from here arises one pair of the antennae. Right? So there is one pair of antennae which would actually arise from the head region. Right? So these antennae, they are actually said to be sensory in function. So we'll talk about what type of sense organs are actually present here, sensory structures are present once we take out the nervous system of this organism. Right? Then what else does the head consist of? Head also consists of something called as the mouth parts. Right? So head also consists of something called as the mouth parts. Now the type of mouth parts present in these organisms are said to be biting and chewing type of mouth parts. right? The type of mouth parts is said to be biting and chewing type of mouth parts. Now, talking about mouth parts, there are different pieces which are all assembled together to form one particular structure, right? So there are different pieces which are actually said to be present. So what are those pieces? The first piece that is present is called the labrum. Labrum. So this labrum is usually referred to as the upper lip of this particular organism, right? So there is one single structure, one large structure, which is called as the labrum that is being present. Right, right below the labrum, right below the labrum, there is something called as mandibles being present. So there is one pair of mandibles being present. Now these mandibles have chitinous teeth, right? So they have these chitinous teeth that are being present, which is involved in crushing the food, right? So they have these chitinous teeth which are involved in crushing the food. Now, along with that, they also have one pair of maxilla being present or maxillae being present. So this maxillae has small extensions which are called as maxillary pipes. So these maxillary pipes, they would hold the food towards the mandibles so that the mandibles are actually able to crush the food, right? So that is the role of maxilla. And then they have one single structure which is called as the labium, and the labium is usually referred to as the lower lip. Right. So these are the four different pieces of mouth parts which are being present, of which the labrum and the labium both are actually said to be single, while the mandibles and maxillae, they are said to be paired structures, right? Mandibles and maxillae, they are said to be the paired structures. Yeah, right. Next, along with these structures, the mouth parts also consists of another structure which is called as the hypopharynx. Right, they would also have this structure called hypopharynx. It is a muscular structure which is very much similar to that of the tongue in case of humans. Right, very much similar to the tongue. Right, hypopharynx is being present. So all of these structures together would start constituting the mouth parts of this organism. Right, and these mouth parts here, they are of biting and chewing type of mouth parts. One more important characteristic feature of mouth of this organism is the mouth is said to be a hypognathous mouth. Mouth is said to be hypognathous. Now, what does this mean? A hypognathous mouth. Hypognathous mouth is nothing but mouth is actually present towards the lower side of the body or towards the lower side of the head. So let me just make it very simple. So if this is the body of this organism, right? The head is at right angles to the body of the organism, right? So if this is the body, the head is actually at right angles to the body of the organism, and right below the head, the mouth is actually being present here. So here, the mouth would be present. So this mouth, which is present right below the head, which is at right angles to the body of this organism, we would start calling it as a hypognathous mouth. This is one important term what you need to remember. The mouth is said to be hypognathous. Reason why it is said to be hypognathous, because it is present below. Hypo refers to below. Gnathos is nothing but the mouth, right? So right below the head, right below the head, the mouth is being present. And again, remember, the head is said to be right angles to the body of this organism. So this we would start calling it as the hypognathous mouth. So these are the different structures which are actually present in the head of this organism. Right. Next, talking about thorax. So here I told you head has 6 segments. Right. Next, thorax has 3 segments. Right. So thorax has 3 segments. Now, what are those 3 segments? Right. So 3 segments include something called as prothoracic segment, prothorax, which is said to be the first part of the thorax. Then the second one is called the mesothorax, and the third one is called as the metathorax. Right, so there are these prothorax, the mesothorax, as well as the metathorax. Right, so right below the head arises these 3 types of, or these 3 segments: the prothorax, the mesothorax, and metathorax. So from these 3 segments arises 2 important structures. Right, 2 important structures arises from these 3 segments. Number 1, there is legs arising. So there are 3 pairs of legs usually arise. Right, there are 3 pairs of legs arising, and there are 2 pairs of wings arising. Right? So there are three pairs of legs which would arise from each of the thoracic segment. So from prothorax there is one pair of leg arising. From the mesothorax there is one pair of leg, right? So the leg which arises from the prothoracic segment we would start calling it as prothoracic leg. Leg which arises from mesothorax we would start calling it as mesothoracic legs, and the legs which arise from metathoracic segment we would start calling it as the metathoracic legs. Along with that, there are two pairs of wings actually arising. Right. So these two pairs of wings, we would start calling it as mesothoracic wing and metathoracic wing. Right? Mesothoracic wing and metathoracic wing. Because they usually arise from the intersegmental septa of the meso and prothorax, sorry, pro and mesothorax. From the junction of meso and metathorax, the metathoracic wing usually arises. Right. So this mesothoracic wing is also called as anterior wing. There are other names also given for it. We also call it as elytra, or we also call it as tegmen. Now this mesothoracic wing, which is called as elytra or tegmina, it is said to be a hard structure, a leathery structure, whose major function is protection. Right? So this wing, mesothoracic wing, majorly is involved in the process of protection, while the metathoracic wing is said to be a transparent structure. It is said to be a transparent structure, and it plays an important role in the flight of this organism. Right? So function of mesothoracic wing is nothing but protection. Function of metathoracic wing is nothing but flight. So even though they don't fly for a long distance, so whatever small flight what they have, so that flight is actually brought about by the metathoracic wings. Right? So these are the two pairs of wings which arise from the thoracic segments, and three pairs of legs arises from the thoracic segments. Right? Now talking about the abdomen part, abdomen has 10 segments. Right? Abdomen has the 10 segments. So these organisms, that is cockroaches, they usually exhibit the process called as sexual dimorphism. Right? So they usually exhibit the process of sexual dimorphism. And that sexual dimorphism is actually mostly observed in the abdominal segment. Right? Especially with regards to the seventh segment. If the seventh segment is said to be larger and it appears to be in the form of a boat shape, then we would start saying that organism is nothing but a female organism. If the seventh segment is said to be smaller, right, then we would start calling it as a male organism, right? So like that, the major difference between the male and female organism could be mostly observed in the abdominal segment. Now, the abdominal segments are mostly covered by chitinous exoskeleton. Remember, I told you right at the beginning of the session that these organisms would have a wide variety of habitat. One of the reasons why they have a wide variety of habitat is I told you that the entire body is covered by chitinous exoskeleton, right? So those chitinous exoskeleton will be predominantly present in the abdominal segment. So those chitinous exoskeleton, we would start calling them as sclerites. So those chitinous exoskeletons, they are usually referred to as the sclerites. So based on which part of the body they are, we would start giving them different names. So sclerites are present towards the dorsal side of the body, towards the ventral side of the body, and towards the lateral sides of the body also. Right. So based on where they are present, if the sclerites are present on the dorsal side of the body, we would start calling them as the tergum or terga, plural terga. If the sclerites are present on the ventral side of the body, we would start calling them as the sternum. And if they are present on the lateral sides of the body, we would start calling them as pleura. Right? So there is this tergum, sternum, and pleura being present. So how exactly they are present? Say if this is the ventral dorsal sclerite, so this dorsal sclerite is nothing but the tergum present on the dorsal side of the body. Here on the ventral side, there would be this sternum that is being present towards the ventral side of the body. And towards the lateral sides, connecting the tergum and the sternum, there are these pleura that is being present. So this would be the pleura. So this is how all of these sclerites are arranged, and inside this sclerite, the body of this organism is being present. Now, all of these sclerites, they are said to be connected by a few membranous structure, right? So they are actually said to be connected by these membranous structure. So these membranous structures, we would start calling it as arthropodial membranes. we would start calling them as arthropodial membranes. So those are nothing but the structures or membranous structures which would start connecting all of those sclerites together, right? So this is what we have with the morphology of this organism. Head 6 segments, thorax 3 segments, and the abdomen will start having the 10 segments that are being present, right? So in brief, this is what we have the morphology of the cockroach, right? So once we are done with morphology, so in the next session, let us take up with the anatomy of the cockroach. So let us begin with the digestive system of cockroach, right? Thank you.